Hey guys, welcome back to How to Roll Dice. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be taking a look at Citadels by Fantasy Flight Games. Citadels is a great little small box card game for 2 to 7 players, 8 players if you have the Dark Cities expansion, which conveniently this box came with. The premise of the game is that you are trying to build the most valuable city that you can by placing district cards into play. The twist is that you are doing this while playing as a specific character, and that character has certain powers and benefits. However, the character that you play as rotates every single round between you and your opponents. Not only are you going to draft which character that you're playing, but before you actually get to draft, you're going to randomly remove characters from that round, some of which you're even going to do in secret, so nobody knows what's available during that round, and you don't find out who has which character until their turn is about to begin. So it's a really interesting spin on sort of having a character with a special ability and that it's constantly shifting, on top of the fact that everybody is trying to build a district as successfully as possible. Getting into the components of the game, which are pretty basic, you've got your district deck right here. This has all of your district cards. District cards have a cost in gold in the upper left corner. That's both how much they cost to put into play and how much they're worth at the end of the game. They've got a name at the bottom of the card, which is basically just flavor text, although I will say you cannot have more than one of the same named card in play in your city. So for example, if you build a castle, you cannot have a second castle in play. They also have a color in the bottom left corner. That color denotes the type of district. I believe blue districts are religious, and green districts are markets, and red districts are military. That doesn't necessarily matter other than for specific character powers and endgame scoring. You do get a bonus at the end of the game if you build at least one district of each color into your city, and there are 5 different colors. Then specific character powers may give you, for example, bonus gold if you have a certain number of districts of a certain type in your city when you play that character. You've then got your character cards while we're on the topic of characters. They are numbered or ranked 1 through 8 in their upper left corner. That's actually going to be the order in which they activate during gameplay. This is not your standard player 1 goes and then we move clockwise around the table. This game actually has a randomized turn order based off of the characters' ranks. And like I said, characters are going to be sort of randomly arranged during each round. Each character has a name also, and a special power at the bottom of their card that you can use once during their turn, as well as a passive power that's sort of always in effect while you're playing as that character. You've got your gold markers right here, nice little plastic resin markers. You've got your crown marker. This is what denotes who has played the king for that round, but at the beginning of the game it actually starts as the player who is the oldest. You've got 8 player aid cards. These have sort of your turn order on one side, and on the other side you've got scoring details. And then you've got a small little rule book right here that really only takes you about 5 minutes to get through because the game is pretty straightforward. For setup, you're going to start by shuffling your district deck and putting it face down in the center of the table, and dealing each player 4 random district cards. That's their starting hand. I will say that because of the Dark Cities option, you could mix in some of the Dark Cities expansion districts into your district deck if you want to. They basically have more advanced, intricate special abilities, but I wouldn't recommend doing that in your first game. Same with the special characters that you get from the Dark Cities expansion. You can basically swap in your Dark City options for your standard options. So for example, rank number 3 card is the Magician in the standard set. If you wanted to swap that out for whatever the rank number 3 card is in the Dark Cities expansion, you could do that, but I'm assuming that that card is slightly more complex to deal with, and so I recommend starting with the basic cards, as does the rulebook. So you're going to shuffle your district cards, put those in the center of the table, deal each player 4 random district cards. You're also going to give each player 2 gold tokens to start, and like I mentioned, you're going to give the oldest player the crown to start. They are not the king for the starting round, but they do have the crown because somebody has to start with the crown to denote who player 1 is. You're then going to pick up and shuffle your character cards. You're going to take one of those cards off the top of the deck, and this is technically turn 1 of the, or step 1, sorry, of the round. You're going to take one of those cards off the top of the deck, and you're going to place it face down in the center of the table. That is one random character that will not be available in this round. It could be the king, it could be any card. I mentioned the king specifically for the next part of this step, which is you're then going to flip additional face-up cards from the character deck that will also not be available in this round. However, if one of those face-up cards is the king, you have to put it back into the character deck and flip out a separate card. So the face-down card could be the king because you don't know, but when flipping face-up characters to remove from the round, if you get the king, you have to put it back in and replace it with a separate character. The number of cards that you flip face-up is basically based off of the number of players that you have in the game. So if you have 4 players playing, you actually want to have 5 cards remaining in the deck. So if you start with 8, you'd pull one off face down. You've got 4 players, so you want 5 cards. There are 7 left after pulling one, so you'd put 2 more face up to get yourself down to 5 cards. Did I do that math right? I think I did. So you have 5 cards and 4 players. Still all face down, you haven't looked at them. You're going to pass those cards to the player with the crown, that's player 1. They're going to look at those options, they're going to choose one and put it face down in front of them, keeping in mind special ability, rank order, because like I said, that's the order that you actually get to take your turn in. So the card with rank number 1, which is the assassin, goes first. The card with rank number 8, which is the warlord, goes last, and everything in between. So player 1 is going to choose a character, put it face down in front of them, and pass the remaining characters to the player to their left. This is the only part of the game that is clockwise. That player is then going to choose a character that they want, put it face down in front of them, and so on until you reach the last player, who should be holding 2 cards. They're going to choose one, put it face down in front of them, and take the last card and put it face down in the center of the board along with the other unused character cards, so that nobody knows, not even the player that passed them those 2 remaining cards, what they chose. They know what they chose from, but not what they chose. Starting with the king, or I should say, the king is going to now start basically doing roll call. They're going to say, character 1, the assassin. And if anybody has character 1, they're going to say, that's me, and they're going to flip their card over, reveal that they're the assassin. If they want to, take the assassin's special power, which is basically to name another character that's going to lose their turn if anybody in fact chose it. And then they're going to begin their turn. Turn is very simple. It's broken into 2 steps. You've got your action step, and then you've got your build step. Your action step is either take 2 gold from the bank, or take 2 cards from the top of the district deck, choosing 1 to keep and 1 to put at the bottom of the district deck. It's not take 2 cards, put them into your hand, and then choose 1 card from your hand to discard. It's one of the 2 cards that you drew is kept, and 1 is discarded to the bottom of the district deck. Once you've taken that action, either 2 money or 2 cards, keeping 1, dumping 1, you then can build. Choose a card from your hand, pay its gold cost to the bank, which is basically the store pile of gold coins in the middle of the table, and put that card face down in front of you. It's now part of your city, keeping in mind that it can't be a duplicate of a card that you already have in play. It's fine if another player has that card in play, but you can't have duplicates in your city. Also keep in mind that at any point during your turn, you can use your character's special power. Most characters have a passive part to their power and an active part. For example, the bishop, which is number 5 rank, he says you receive 1 gold for each religious, meaning blue, district in your city. And on top of that, your districts may not be destroyed or exchanged by the warlord or diplomat. I'm not going to get into what those do, but basically you're safe from the warlord and the diplomat. However, that's the passive part. The active part is that you may receive 1 gold for each blue district in your city. If you choose to do that at the beginning of your turn, if you have 1 blue district, for example, in your city, you would gain 1 blue gold, or 1 gold for that blue district, which you could then use for building. However, if you choose to use it at the end of your turn, perhaps after building a secondary blue district, you would get 2 gold, but it's after you've already spent to build. So you don't just get to choose to gain gold throughout your turn. It's not like if you begin your turn with 1 in play, you gain 1, and then if throughout your turn you play a second blue district, you gain a second one. It's when you use it. You choose when to trigger it, and you gain the correct amount of gold based off of the moment that you trigger it. And that's true for all of the special abilities. You choose when to use them, and they basically trigger based off of the current table state. So once a player has taken an action, which is gaining gold or gaining a card, and built if they wanted to, it's optional, you might want to pool your gold for building a better district later on, the king, or whoever has the crown for that turn, I should say, continues to call out numbers. So if that was card number 1 or character number 1, the assassin, the king will then say character number 2, the thief. And if nobody has the thief, or if somebody has the thief, they'll take their turn. If nobody has the thief, then he says, okay, character number 3, the magician. Obviously you can skip cards that are visibly not in the round because they're face up on the table in front of everybody to see, so we know they're not in the round. So you can skip those, maybe still call them out, but then go, it's on the table, move on to the next person. Once you've reached the last player. No need to go all the way to 8 if 8's on the board, or if the last player happens to be number 6. You don't have to go all the way to 8, because once the last player is gone, clearly everybody has taken their turn. So you move on through the round until everybody's taken their turn, and at that point you're basically going to restart the process. Everybody's going to pass their character cards to the middle, they're going to get reshuffled, you're going to restart with taking one face down, pulling it out for the round, then taking the correct number of cards face up and pulling those out of the round, and then starting the draft with whoever has the crown. The crown passes whenever somebody reveals that they are the king. If you are the king, you immediately gain the crown on top of whatever I believe he gives you additional gold for yellow districts. But his passive ability is you immediately gain the crown. There are a lot of interactive abilities. For example, like I mentioned, the assassin, when they are revealed, that player gets to name any other character. Obviously, don't choose one that's visibly face up on the table. But say, for example, the assassin names the merchant, which is the rank number 6 card. When the king calls, or whenever who has the crown calls player number 6, the merchant, if that is actually in play and that character flips it over, they lose their turn. They just don't get to do anything. They say, I'm the merchant, I'm dead. And that's it, that's their whole turn. Same thing with the magician, or I should say the magician. No, let's go the thief. The thief, similar to the assassin, when he is revealed, announces a player that they wish to steal from. When that player reveals who they are, you immediately get to take their gold. So say, for example, the thief says, I want to steal from the architect. Again, you probably don't want to choose a card that's face up on the table because we know that it's not in play. And the thief says, I want to steal from the architect. So if when we get to rank number 7 and the king says, or again, the person with the crown, I keep confusing, the king gains you the crown. The crown means that you were the king last turn. So the thief says, I want to steal from the architect. The person with the crown gets to the number 7 rank and says, okay, who's the architect? That character flips it over and the thief immediately steals all their gold. That doesn't mean they don't get a turn, and that doesn't mean they can't then gain more gold during their turn if they have an ability that gains them gold. It just means whatever gold they began that turn with, they're going to lose to the thief. So again, it's a pretty straightforward game. You continue around the table until somebody has built their 8th district, at which point you finish that round, and that's the end of the game. So the game doesn't immediately end when a player plays their 8th district. You have to give everybody else a chance to try to keep up. And in fact, you can go past 8 districts. There are some cards that allow you to play additional districts in one turn. So for example, the architect, I believe, lets you play up to 3 districts in one go. And so if the player before you plays their 8th district and you were at 7 districts, and on your turn you play the architect and you can jump forward 2 or 3 districts, you might be able to end at 8, 9, maybe even 10 districts. And there are also bonus points for reaching 8 districts, even if you weren't the player to first reach 8 districts. So let's jump into sort of end game scoring, since that's pretty much where we're at. The end of game scoring is pretty straightforward. You're going to start off by gaining a number of points equal to the gold costs of all of the cards in your city. So you basically just add those up, and that's your base victory points. On top of that, you're going to gain a bonus 3 victory points if you have at least 1 district of each of the 5 colors. You're then going to gain a bonus 4 victory points if you were the first player to play their 8th district. And you're going to gain 2 victory points if you weren't the first player to play 8 districts, but you have at least 8 districts. On top of that, some of the purple cards, which are sort of specialty districts, have special abilities on them that might grant you additional victory points, or maybe passive abilities or triggerable abilities throughout the course of the game, so keep that in mind. And at the end of the game, whoever wins, whoever has the most points, is the winner. So that's pretty much it. That's Citadels. It's a very quick game. It doesn't take very long to get through. I want to say it's maybe 30, 40 minutes. I like that with this box, getting the Dark Cities expansion, you can mix it up and switch in different characters. You can switch in different districts. For some reason, the book recommends that if you're going to switch in districts, only add, or not switch in, but add in districts, only add 2 or 3. I don't know why that's necessary. It's not like you're really bloating the deck. You're looking at something like a 40 or 50 card deck here, maybe even more than that, maybe 60 card deck. Adding in 13 new districts really isn't going to do anything, so I'm not sure why they're worried about that. I do understand, obviously, with the characters, if you're going to swap in a new character number 5, you need to take out the old character number 5, otherwise when whoever has the crown calls character number 5, 2 people are going to reveal, and that's not going to work. I do know there is a larger version of this game that I have not looked into that comes in a much bigger box, and at first I thought, oh, it must be a board game version of the game, or something with some more advanced rules or a new system. It doesn't seem to be. It just seems to be more cards. There's something like 30 new characters and 50 new district cards or something like that. It doesn't really change the actual flow or function or gameplay or setup or anything like that. It just adds a lot more options. So this is pretty much the whole game, given that it includes the Dark Cities expansion. I think it's a lot of fun. Again, it's a small box filler game. You're certainly not going to spend an entire evening, or if you do, you're not going to do it more than once playing this game. I could see fitting in maybe 2 or 3 sessions of this in an evening, but after 2 or 3 times around, it does get a little bland unless you're really new to gaming. I myself prefer something with a little more crunch to it, which, if you don't know, is a term generally used for games that have more complex rules that you can kind of sink your teeth into. This game is simple, but it is fun. It's got almost the feel of a social game where characters or players have secret character roles that aren't revealed until it's their turn to do something, but it's not as vicious or deceptive as some of those games can get. Games like Ultimate Werewolf and Coup and Resistance, those games all have the aspect that you have to lie in order to make progress for yourself. This game doesn't have that. It's just you have a character that is a secret until it's time for you to take your turn, and then it's not a secret anymore. And because characters are shifting constantly from round to round, it's not like you're trying to consistently conceal who you are. It's just a small little temporary thing where you get to have a secret for a few seconds and then it's over, and then next round starts and you get to have another secret for a few seconds. Some people are better at the game than others based off of their poker face. That doesn't necessarily break the game, but if you immediately react to whatever happens in the game, even though your character hasn't been revealed yet, it kind of takes some of the fun out of it. If, for example, the assassin says, "I'm going to kill the bishop," if the player that drew the bishop, who obviously hasn't gone yet because they're rank number 5 and we're only on rank number 1, if the player who has the bishop immediately goes, "Oh man," well, that kind of takes the fun out of it, because now we know you're the bishop and everybody kind of like can put that knowledge into their decisions that they make throughout the rest of the turn. There are a couple of pitfalls to the game. The whole calling out the rank order thing can be a little bleh. I kind of wish there was some kind of a tracker or a bar or something that you could use to keep an eye on whose turn it is, because a lot of times the king or the person with the crown will say, "Okay, character number 3, the magician," and the magician will go and they'll have to do some thinking and they'll talk about who they want to swap hands with, because that's the magician's special ability, and they swap hands, then they look at their new cards, then they decide if they want to pull 2 cards from the deck or 2 gold from the bank, and they look at what they've got and they thumb through their districts, they decide to play a district, and then they go, "Okay, I'm done." And then it's up to the king, after 3 or 4 minutes of delineation or deliberation, it's up to the player with the crown to go, "Okay, you were the magician, so that was 3, so now we're on 4. 4's on the table, okay, 5," and it kind of, that hesitation before you can just move right into the next player's turn, that delay, I feel kind of interrupts the game a little bit. I like the mechanic, it's cool, it's just I feel like there has to be a way to make it flow a little better. Maybe with practice you'd get good at it, but it's not necessarily the kind of game you're gonna play so much that you develop a skill for it, I don't think. But maybe, that might just be me. Another thing is that you can really start to target players once you understand what they're going for. If, for example, a character has 2 or 3 districts of the same color in front of them, one obvious choice would be for the player to take the character that benefits off of that color. So if, for example, you have 3 military districts already in play in your city, different names, not duplicates, but red districts that are military districts, anybody who plays the warlord character gains additional gold for the number of red districts that they have. So looking at a player that has 3 red districts in front of them, you might go, "I bet they're going to play the warlord, because why wouldn't you? That's 3 extra golds every turn." So then if you, as either the assassin or as the thief, get to choose who you want to essentially attack, immediately you're going to go, "Well, I'm almost certain that if that person can pick the warlord, they're going to pick the warlord, so I know the warlord's going to be in play, likely, so I'm going to choose warlord." And so that one player, because their plan became obvious, starts getting over-targeted, and the game can get a little frustrating for that player, because now they have to abandon their plan because they've made themselves they made other players too aware of what it was they were doing. And I guess that's kind of a strategy. That's a little bit of, concealing your hand and keeping your plans as low-key as you can. but it kind of stinks when one player starts to get so focused on in such a small game. That's one of the good things about larger games or more complex games, especially German-style board games where there's no direct player-to-player conflict, or combat, I should say, is that it makes it harder for one individual player to feel attacked by multiple players or even by one player. In such a small, simple game like this, it's very easy for one player to become targeted and for that player to actually really feel targeted and to no longer be having fun because they feel like they're getting attacked by the other players, they're getting ganged up on. It doesn't happen that often. If you have the right group of people, it either won't happen or it won't matter, because that's all part of the game, right? But for some people, that can be frustrating. So anyways, Citadels. A cheap game to pick up, a small box game, a fast game to play. It's great that it suits 2 to 8 players if you have the expansion, which comes in this box. I think this is the smallest option that you can get, so I don't even know if you can get the game without the Dark Cities expansion. So yeah, cheap, easy to play, easy to learn, fits a great range of players and a great number of players, 2 to 8. I would definitely recommend picking it up and keeping it on your shelf in case you ever need to pop something out for a quick little filler game, or if you just want to do a couple of sessions in one night as opposed to setting up some massive epic scale game. Yeah, good stuff. I would definitely recommend you give it a try. If you guys haven't yet, please go down below and subscribe, and make sure you set your notification bell to all. Otherwise, subscribing doesn't really do anything other than artificially boost numbers that don't mean anything. If you have time, leave a like or a dislike, or maybe leave a comment either on the game, the channel, or anything that you choose, and I'll try to get back to you. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.